Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a different video. I'm actually going to be going over a leak, I guess in a sense, of the Samsung S21 FE. I actually was able to order a display for the S21 FE, and I'm going to compare it to the S20 FE and see if there's any major differences. And if you enjoy this type of video, let me know in the comment section or message me on the social medias listed above, and that way I can see if we can do other videos. For example, I'm able to get access to the LG Stylo 7 displays and some of those parts for those types of phones that were either never released or are still waiting to be released. So let me know in the comments or on the social media, and let's get started. So these are pretty much labeled as the same. They're new displays and they're refurbished, but pretty much what that means on the S21 FE is that it's not in a Samsung service pack, so that's considered refurbished, even though it's never been worked on. The S20 FE, on the other hand, this one is refurbished. So the main part of the phone, which is the OLED panel, that is still original, but the back panel and the actual glass on the front has been replaced. And most of the time when that does happen, it's replaced by original OEM parts, not by aftermarket parts. But let's remove this little piece right here that covers up the fingerprint scanner, which it looks like it's still just a regular fingerprint scanner. It's not the ultrasonic one, which honestly I think is a better option. The ultrasonic ones still kind of suck. But you can see straight through it. There's no real differences. The only difference is the actual OLED panel looks a little bit off. That might be because of the polarizer or whatever has been done on the S20 FE. So I'm not going to say that they're completely different, but there are some slight differences. But then when we look at the cables itself, you can see these little drivers and IC chips look pretty similar. Some a little bit different, but pretty similar. And it looks like this little test point area is pretty much the same as well. And when we go to the actual display connector, it looks identical and is possibly the exact same type of connector. So I wouldn't be too surprised if the S21 FE screen does work on an S20 FE. The main difference I see is the Digitizer cable, which is this right here. This one has a much smaller IC chip, whereas the one on the S20 FE has a much larger chip. It could be made by different manufacturers, but that is something that I noticed. And then we look at the front camera on the S20 FE, it looks to be a little bit different. There's a kind of silver goldish ring that goes around the front camera. On this one, it looks very pronounced, like it's very large, whereas on the S21 FE, it seems to be very small and almost not too noticeable. I remember on the S20 FE it is very noticeable, kind of like on the Samsung A51. And you can see the light sensor is in the same place, and it looks like the front camera is also in the same place as well, which makes sense. It should be right in the middle. And if we slide this up all the way, we'll actually see that the earpiece is also in the same place and the same size, which is where this gets kind of interesting. So let's take off this little cover that goes on the screen. Let's take it off on both of them. And we're actually going to compare and see the exact size of the display. And when we look at this, it looks like the glass and the OLED panel line up perfectly. They look to be the exact same size, which is very interesting. And if we go to the bottom as well, it looks like the OLED panel ends at the exact same place. The cable on the S20 FE is a little bit loose, so that's why it looks like that, compared to the S21 FE, which I can actually fold down like this. But the S21 FE just has some adhesive behind it, and honestly, I don't want to tear it, so I don't want to mess that up. So I'm just going to leave it like that. But yeah, it looks pretty much like it's the exact same screen. And that's pretty much an overview of the display. I'm just going to make it look nice and put them back in the packaging. But I do think it's interesting because on Samsung's website for the S20 FE, we have a 6.5 inch screen that's 1080p by 2400. And it's actually ironic because on Samsung's website they have it at 1440p, which is not true. They have the pixels per inch correct, which is 407 pixels per inch. It's a 120 Hz display, HDR10 plus support, but it's obviously not a 1440 display. It literally says Full HD plus. But the interesting thing is that the Samsung S21 FE is supposed to be a 6.41 inch display. Now, Samsung could be rounding it up, and also when you do have a rounded display on the corners, they will say stuff like it's a 6.4 inch screen, but it also could be listed as a 6.32 inch screen. So that might be a little bit off, but it is interesting if it is a 6.41 inch display because it looks to be the exact same size. And that's pretty much all that I know about this display. I don't really have a phone to test it, and honestly, if I did have a S20 FE to test it, I wouldn't want to risk breaking the phone if it's not compatible. Hopefully it is. I might be able to test that in the future, but I did think this was interesting because I could actually purchase this part, and yes, the actual display cost is cheaper than what the S20 FE was when it was brand new, but the screen does cost a little bit more than what I can get the S20 FE for now, at about $9 more. And the obvious reason that Samsung would actually use this display is because they want to cut costs down as much as they can. For example, the S20 FE was like $700. It's supposed to be a cheaper version of the S20, which is kind of interesting because the S21 is $800, so I don't know how well that's going to work, and most likely what they're going to have to do is try and make this phone a $600 phone to make it worth it for people to buy this. And reusing the same screen, not to mention after a year of using that screen, the price is going to be a little bit cheaper for them to manufacture it. So it all makes sense for what this phone is supposed to be, but it is going to be interesting to see at the end of this month, or possibly even next month, when this phone does get launched, and see if this is actually the display for this phone. But that's pretty much all that I wanted to talk about. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know if you like these types of videos where we kind of go in depth, or I guess look at some of the parts that are available for phones or available for future phones. Like I said, I do have access to some LG Stylo 7 screens, and that phone was never released. So like I said, let me know in the comment section or message me on any of the social medias listed above. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.